Well, good evening and welcome everyone. We're delighted you've been able to join us on this newsletter live event, OU RfP Newsletter Live on Pancake Day, no less. So let's hope you've enjoyed them already or going to have them afterwards. We invite you please to put your screen on speaker view so they'll be able to hear each of our speakers as they share their top texts or their work in relation to the feature reading groups or examples of reading for pleasure practice that make a difference to children's lives. We're looking forward to, particularly, to welcome Teacher Sandar later on this evening. So, with no further ado, you've got a sense of what's coming next. If my screen will move, there you go. We've got a range of different examples of practice, TRGs, top texts to share, and we're also going to engage in a book wave. So if you haven't got one, please go grab a book for that moment of the book wave before we close with some research and thanks from Kelly. But first, in time-honoured fashion in OU RfP events, we're going to read a story. And tonight I've chosen a story by David Armand, not The Dam, illustrated by Levi Pinfold, but a newer one. One illustrated by the inimitable Laura Carlin, who's also worked with Nicola Davis and many other brilliant authors. And I'll be really interested to know what you think of this. Karen Tulloch and I have been discussing it, and we'd be delighted to know what you think. So there'll be opportunity to scribble in the chat line at the end of that what you're thinking. The Woman Who Turned Children into Birds, written by David Armand and illustrated by Laura Carlin. The Woman Who Turned Children into Birds by David Armand, illustrated by Laura Carlin, a Walker Studio book. A woman came to town. Her name was Nancy Solo. She said she could turn children into birds. What rubbish, said the teachers. There's laws against that, said the police. It's just plain daft. It's total trash. It's piffle, twaddle, balderdash. You don't want that to happen, do you, children? So stay away. But of course there was one little girl. Her name was Dorothy Carr. She pretended to be just wandering and thinking of nothing at all. Nancy Solo called to her, "Would you like to sit with me?" Dorothy knew that maybe she shouldn't, but oh, she did. And Nancy made marks upon the earth. She whispered words into Dorothy's ear, and then she said, "Go on, be happy. Off you fly." And where there'd once been a Dorothy Carr, there was now a swallow swooping up into the blue. It didn't last forever, just a few short, soaring minutes, and soon Dorothy was Dorothy again, heading home again. "Did you go far, love?" "Oh, no, Dad, not too far at all." But she whispered to the other children, It's true. And Colin Fox was next to go. He walked straight up to Nancy Solo. "Nancy Solo, I wish to be an eagle." Nancy laughed. "You'll never be an eagle. You shall be a sparrow." And she made her mark, she whispered her words, and then she said, "Go on, be happy, up you go." And in an instant, Colin was changed, and off he flew. Now lots of the children wanted to turn, even Susan Mabepe, just 4 years old. She became a goldfinch. And massive, muscly Walter Pope turned into a rook, and quiet Wolfgang Hurst was transformed into a parakeet. And until one afternoon, the sky above the town was filled with children who had turned into birds. "The sky's just lovely. Come on, Daddy. Come on, Miss. Come on, P.C. Blenkinsop." "No, no, no, no. Get out of that sky this minute. Come down here at once." "But what on earth are you frightened of?" "Time to get rid of that Nancy Solo. She's mad, she's bad, she's utterly scary. Bad Nancy Solo, leave us alone. Vamoose, skedaddle, scarper, scrab." "Okay, my dears, I'll be off. I'm always on the move. But perhaps you'd like, before I leave, to have wings to fly and a beak to sing." "What a silly crackpot notion. Clap, trap, Tommy Rot, piffle bunkum." "But what on earth are you frightened of?" "Oh, look, it's the big fella, Oswald Malone." She's whispering her words, she's making her marks, and golly gumdrops, up he goes. "Gadzooks, what joy, hurrah, what fun. Come on up, the sky's just grand." Come on, Daddy, come on, Miss, come on, Beauty Blankentop. Oh, just look. Oh, just look. Up they go, and up they go. Oh, yes, it's wild. It's just plain daft. It's far out, cranky, dippy dotty, nutty, freaky, batty poppy. It's glorious. It's just the best. Now the sky is filled with joy. The air is filled with such sweet song. Up they go, and up they go, up they go, and up they go. Nobody knows how Nanty did it. Maybe she didn't know herself. Soon enough, she went away. She goes to lots of towns, they say, and so that's that. The story's done. Go on. Be happy. Off you fly. The woman who turned children into birds. Please, can I invite you all to pop something in the chat line about what you think David Armand, who's one of our greatest writers, is really exploring here? What could their collective message be? What did he offer to Laura Carlin that she created in this wondrous way with these glorious end papers with the little girl walking? Perhaps it is the core character Dorothy Carr at the very beginning in this first end paper, if you can see her clearly there, and then in the end paper, them flying as birds. So over to you for a quick moment of thought in the chat line. I'm really rather fascinated by this book. We've been having a debate about it. What's it trying to tell us? Is it simply fun? Is it much more than fun? What's the message here? So Debbie Kelly, anything you can see in the chat line that's helping us think?
Oh, lots of people making comments there about children, children's freedom. Comments about it being read aloud, which I think is something that also strikes us when we listen to somebody reading aloud to us. I think the feeling as an adult. Oh, Carl says, amazing people come into our lives and enable us to fly. Maybe it's only for a short period, but their impact lives beyond.
That's an interesting thought, Carl. Makes me think of an old drama teacher who came and saw me teach drama years ago. Gave me some windows of opportunity decades ago. Any others, Debbie Kelly?
Lots about freedom and about exploring. Rachel said exploring.
Okay. Is he also saying about adults and compliance, conformity to the adult? Because it's very black and white with the adults and then gets gradually a bit more colour. But is it the kids who explore and not the adults? Is that what he's telling us? I don't know. Is it about imagination?
Mm.
I don't know. I think we better move on. I'm going to stop sharing and turn over to Karen Tulloch, who's going to give us some top texts to take us further on. Debbie's going to put Karen, or somebody's going to put Karen in the spotlight, I think. Karen's one of our experienced teacher reading group leaders, and she's got 3 fabulous picture books to share with us tonight. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So the first one, I am just going to try and fit it into the box, is I Remember. So that's too close. There it is. You can see that, can't you? I Remember by Jean Willis and Raquel Catalina, which is a really delightful picture book about the story of George and his grandma. And his grandma sometimes forgets things. And it's a really touching story about dementia, actually, which is quite a difficult topic, but it's portrayed really sensitively, really beautifully. So perfect for young children. Just really about how she forgets lots of things, but never her love for him and never his love for her. So it's a really beautiful picture book for young children about dementia. The next book I've chosen is, lining it up badly here, Out of the Blue by Robert Tregoning and Steph Murphy. And this is based in a place where anything that isn't blue is banned. But this little boy doesn't like blue, he likes yellow. And it's just about liking what you like and being who you are. I'm going to read you this little bit from it. Life is like a rainbow. We all love different things. So celebrate your difference and enjoy the joy love brings. Whether you love yellow or whether you love blue, let your colours shine and love what makes you, you. And the final one, am I on time for 3 minutes, is the comet, which is about a little girl called Nyla who's moved to the city and didn't want to move to the city because she loved where she lived, where she saw a comet and could see comets. And she moves to the city and doesn't like it at all until she tries to make it more like the place she loved. And it's really a story about moving somewhere and making that somewhere home, and that there are comets everywhere. So, is that 3 minutes?
Perfect.
I'm thanking you so much while I'm muted. My apologies, Karen. Thank you so much.
I was really nervous then. Nervous that you didn't answer me.
Apologies. Now I'm turning over to Debbie, who's going to give us some news update of some of the things that the Open University team are involved in.
Fantastic. Thank you. I've got 4 news items for you this evening. And the first one you might know something about. And I think we might have some people in the room actually who were on the Reading Schools programme, which is really great to see them this evening. But if you don't know about it, then this is one of the things that you might be interested in. If Reading for Pleasure is a whole school development priority for you, then really this is one of the things that you might want to join. Now, it's a whole school programme that we run as an OU team. It's a year-long programme. It's not a package. It's not the kind of thing that comes with schemes or telling you how to teach and what to do with it. It's evidence-informed, and it's about you as leaders working as a team, creating a change team to take your school forward and looking at impacting on Reading for Pleasure practice, teacher subject knowledge, but also impacting onto that lowest 20%. So that's what we are offering, with lots of support alongside the programme that runs for a year. And your English leader and the head teachers will have support in specific sessions. There's also that change team I mentioned, and we do a whole day conference for your entire staff to engage with. And our focus is really on those disadvantaged, or that lowest 20%, in terms of Reading for Pleasure. So if you're interested, and it's going to be about building a sustainable reading community in your school, impacting on reading attitudes and attainment that we're interested in, then you can see the flyer that I think Kelly's going to try and drop into the chat for us, which has got a bit more detail on it. But also you can sign up. We've got some briefings coming up. There's 3 dates on the screen. You can either sign up using the QR code that's there, or you can use the link that Kelly will drop in the chat. We take about 6 groups of 12, and some of those groups are going fast. So you might want to join a briefing and get signed up with us. My second item is some of the resources that you may or may not have discovered on our website. And we've got posters already that we've shared with you previously. The latest one that's gone up is the Social Reading Environments poster. And if you're a teacher reading group leader, a TRG leader in the room, that supports your session 3 in terms of the sessions that you're leading. But for anybody, it's actually a really useful prompt and reminder to get the discussion going around social reading environments. Also, excitingly, our podcasts have launched, our podcast series. The first one about book talk is already out there. And just this week, we have released Kelly's latest one. So thank you, Kelly, in conversation with Amy, Lucas and Lou, talking about independent reading time. So please do go to the website and have a look at our podcasts and have a listen. You might know about my third item, Empathy Day. If you haven't got the date in your diary, well worth having a look at their website. And the theme this year is Mission Empathy. So do look at what they've got on offer. There's an National Assembly with Joseph Coelho, but there's also lots of resources to support you in using the Empathy Lab resources. 2 collections of books, which I know lots of people in the RfP community have been involved in. Teresa and Rich with us here tonight have been involved in selecting those as a primary collection and a secondary collection. And lastly, some of you have been waiting for this. So the quality mark that we jointly have created with UKLA and Open University is going to be available. It's been piloted in the last year, and there are going to be 25 schools that can be selected following an application process. If you're interested in taking part, or you think you might want to get involved, there's a CPD session which is focused around Reading for Pleasure, but also introduces the quality mark on the 20th of April. There is a cost involved, so do look out on our newsletter and on our social media channels. You'll see when we actually put that up for you to register to attend. Few news items
Debbie,
there.
that's fabulous. In fact, I just heard on the email today, I think we're launching the Quality Mark meeting and chance to register next week. So press releases will be going out and so on. So it'll hit before our newsletter. So do look out for it on Facebook and social media, UKLA and OU. Okay, so now we're turning, and I'm sure you can move us to the next screen, Deb, for to Vicky Varley, who's going to give us, alongside Jane Lilly, some examples of practice. But we're starting with Vicky. She's a new TRG leader in Sheffield. Welcome, Vicky, and we're interested to hear on what you've been working on your example of practice. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. So yeah, I'm a TRG leader in Sheffield, and I'm going to share an example of practice that I've been doing in school. I'm in a large infant school, and when I moved to year 2, I quickly realised that there was a gap in my RfP knowledge, and that was around early chapter books. I was felt quite comfortable with picture books, but when parents started asking me for recommendations, I realised that I couldn't answer their questions well enough. I'd inherited some chapter books from the previous Y2 teacher, but when I watched what the children were doing, they weren't accessing them. They would pick them up, flick through them, but they were just too long, and for older children, they weren't getting any satisfaction from them. And when the children did bring books into school, for example, for World Book Day, I noticed that they were quite dependent on Dahl and Williams. There just wasn't a wide variety of authors. So I decided to do something about that. I decided to do an EOP around early chapter books to increase my own teacher knowledge so that I could recommend and support reading for pleasure both in school and at home. And Lou Rayner, another TRG leader, showed us an example of a reading newsletter, and I thought that'd be a great way of sharing recommendations with parents. Just on this slide, you can see I've just put up a few chapter books. These are all part of series. I think series are really great for young children because if they enjoy one of the books, it means they can then choose themselves to read another familiar book to them. Thank you. So the next slide talks about how I found early chapter books. So I was looking for texts for independent reading, but also texts that were a little bit more challenging for reading aloud, both in the classroom and at home. I wanted texts that were achievable, both in terms of the language, the length, and the organisation of the text. And the children had told me themselves they wanted short chapters. Texts that were highly illustrated I was looking for to bridge that gap between picture books and chapter books. I wanted them to be engaging and inclusive. And there's a few places on the slide where I look for chapter books. I read all the books myself to see if I felt they were suitable for the children, but also to make sure that when the children had read them, I could chat to them about them as well. There's an example of a chapter book. It's the Rabbit and Bear series. The children absolutely love these, and you can just see how there's not too much text on the page, and there's still lots of gorgeous illustrations to keep the children engaged and support their comprehension. So when I found the books, I then had to get them to the children and the parents. So we did read alouds, we had a booknick, we did first chapter fun where I made a list of about 10 chapter books. I read the first chapter to the children, and as I read them, they would tick or cross whether they liked them or not. And when we'd finished reading the 10, they took them home to use, it was the beginning of the holiday, so parents could take them to the library. I made the reading newsletter. You can see an example of the latest one at the bottom of the page. So there's recommendations for chapter books in there, as well as other recommendations, picture books, graphic novels, and things that have been going on around RfP in school. We made a mini library in the classroom alongside other text types, and I made time for the children to read the book. So we had a daily relaxed reading time as well. Top tip, if you want children to read chapter books, give them a bookmark. It doesn't have to be a proper one, post-it notes, cut up birthday cards, anything, but they love bookmarks, and it really helped them, I noticed, to go back to the chapter book the next time and pick it up and carry on reading. Okay, a shout out for Little Gems as well. They're really brilliant early chapter books, just the right size for little hands and highly illustrated. They're just a brilliant series from Barrington Stoke there. Following on,
You've a minute left, young lady.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. We ended up with an author visit because the children were so engaged by An Alien in the Jam Factory. Chrissy Sains, when I tweeted that they were so engaged, she said, I'll come and do an author visit, which created just this massive buzz in the classroom and at home. And the children went home talking about it to their parents. So what was the impact? My knowledge increased, my confidence increased. I loved the books, and the children were choosing to read them in school and at home. There was lots more book chats. Positive impact on attainment as well, the will influencing the skill and vice versa. We ended up with just such a brilliant reading community. When the new teacher came for their next class, all they asked about was, what books have you got in the classroom for us to read next year? That's all they were interested in. We had one child who English was his second language, Hashan. He came into school, he could read, but he said, it's boring, I'm not reading, don't show me a book. And by the end, he was absolutely reading for pleasure and reading at home, bringing books in for me to read as well, saying, aren't they amazing? Before Chrissy Sains came in, he said, he just whispered to me, I can't tell you how excited I am about meeting this author. It was just fantastic. Parents loved it. They started, I asked for them for some feedback about how it had gone. They said we were getting library cards out, they were going to the library with the children, they were reading to their children, the siblings were getting involved as well. It was just such a brilliant time. I'm so glad I did the TRG and I did the project, because it has such an amazing benefit on my own practice and on the children.
Thank you, Vicky. That's really lovely. And it's a real kind of journey of your travelling, your learning, and the children, and listening to the children's desire for more series books, and you're developing your knowledge. That's fabulous. I'm turning now to Jane Lilly, who was involved in the Reading for Schools programme last year, who's from Bishop Stortford. So over to the next screen, Debbie, please.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, we were part of the programme last year, and what it really allowed us to do was, in a very structured way, it allowed us to develop our reading for pleasure. So we had two aims with our project. One, and all the actions we did, we linked back to these aims. So the first one, we wanted to develop the teacher's knowledge of authors. I think they were all a bit stale, really, but we started our journey to a local trip to Waterstones. You can see a photo there of all of us there. And really the reason for that was to motivate teachers to want to improve their subject knowledge. So each teacher was given a small budget to choose books that they wanted to buy. They could choose any books, but they had to be by authors they were unfamiliar with. So, but since then we've built on that relationship with Waterstones, and they regularly send us emails about new releases. They're happy to compile book lists for us, because we wanted an empathy book list, so we could just contact Sarah and she came back with the list. And actually they also offer a discount, so if you do have a local Waterstones, it's probably might be worth contacting. But then also, to further develop our teachers, we then asked them to subscribe to reading blogs such as the Library Lady, I think it might be on the next slide, that information, and newsletters. And these resources were actually really good to help develop our teachers' knowledge, because it didn't dramatically increase their workloads. So they had the choice to read one author, but what they also knew was about several more. You might find that one teacher read one book, another one read another one, and then they just spoke about them. So it really helped develop that broader knowledge rather than just focusing on one author. And then a couple of our teachers then joined our Hertfordshire children's book group, which have been really supportive, and they have a great source of information and discussion. There's some librarians there, and just lots of like-minded people. So again, it just spread the load and spread the discussion. So it's really good. And all of that meant that our teachers started learning about authors and their current releases. We also asked teachers to contribute to our school reading wish list. So we thought it was important. They were learning about new authors to then put forward books they'd like to see. We then shared that list with parents and our PTA, and I think we were quite supportive. And every time we got some books in, we put a photograph on display around the school so children could see how it was slowly increasing. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see a line of books. Well, they're books that were on display, and we put those in shelving in our vestibule area, which meant that they were highly visible, and they were put there to tempt both the children and the adults just to interact, to pick up, flick through, put them back on the shelf, borrow them if they wanted to, and if not, just have a quick flick through. We also put lots of baskets of books around the school, including the staff room. Anywhere where people might congregate, you'd find a box of books just for people to pick up and interact with them. But alongside developing that knowledge of authors, we just really wanted to promote book talk within our school, because we felt that children found reading quite, in a way, a passive activity. They knew they had to do it. Some enjoyed it, and some, never really talked about it or got their teeth into it. So to achieve this, we just tried to promote reading at every opportunity. We'd have interactive reading displays. We did book review displays. I think that was on the previous slide, but you'll see we published a half-termly newsletter, which meant parents were aware of what was going on. We asked children to contribute to that as well. And also I displayed all of the books that I had in a bookcase at the front of the school. So it meant that children could see that I'd read these books, and it just gave them a point of contact to come and start talking about books. And then that sort of thread throughout the school now, but it was a real great visual to kick everything off. We also asked the children that they could make any book suggestions that they'd like to see in school, and there was a box there that they could just put little post-it notes in. We did weekly opportunities for children across year groups to meet and share books. We created a reading garden, and I think you can see some pictures of some children having a look out there. There was also a group of year 5 pupils became the reading guardians, and they were in charge of looking after that, restocking it, changing the stock around. They also organised a book trolley for the lunchtime club for children that didn't want to be outside. We then appointed some librarians, and they had a role of opening the library before and during the school day, and that was purely for them to keep organised and stock up with the new books. They also ran a reading cafe on a regular basis in school, but that was open to the whole school, and parents could come along to that as well, or grandparents, you know, anyone that was around was welcome to come to those before the start or after school. And what I think we can definitely
30 seconds.
say, well, that's just perfect actually, because what I can say is there's been a definite culture change around reading for pleasure in our school, and there's a buzz, which I think is the excitement part. People want to talk about reading. And we had a recent visitor who last week I showed around the school, and they commented that reading was obviously a big part of the school. And, you know, it's great to hear that. But I think one of the reasons we were able to achieve that was that we just did it in such a systematic way. We had our aims, we looked at the actions that could develop those aims, and we stuck quite tightly to those. And yeah, the project's really helped us make reading come alive in our school.
Great, thank you, Jane. It sounds like you're on the journey from sort of passive readers to active readers to then
Yes.
interactive readers with adults, children, librarians and guardians. Great, that's really lovely. We're turning now then to some teacher reading group updates. We run these teacher reading groups with the Open University and UKLA in partnership. And the first up are Hannah Sycamore and Kirsten Barrett, who are sharing from they're based in Glasgow, as it were, who are going to share about the work they've been engaged in with their TRG. Over to you two.
Thank you very much. I'll kick us off. So yes, as Teresa mentioned, our group is based in Glasgow. However, I'm currently in Edinburgh undertaking my PGDE in primary education, and Kirsten is based in Glasgow. We run our group online, which means that we have a range of people joining us from different parts of Scotland. We found that format worked really well for us. We have different experiences from different authorities, which leads to a really rich discussion. Kirsten and I met a wee while ago. We both used to run Teach Meets, and we met at a Teach Meet in person in Glasgow pre-pandemic, and leading these Teach Meets that we've done in the past then led us on to wanting to set up or to run one of the Open University Reading for Pleasure groups, and to support the professional development of other practitioners and how we could kind of disseminate that and support that. At our last session, we had one of the members sharing their expertise, which was really great to tap into, on graphic novels. If you want to move on to the next slide. Fabulous. So yeah, just a wee bit about the different projects, because I'm going to tell you more about that. Our mantra as a group, as this is our first year, is that we're keeping it simple and we're thinking about the small changes that we can focus on. So because I'm undertaking my training at the moment and I'm moving between different schools for placement, I have been wearing, I hope you can see that I've got it on today as well, my Ask Me What I'm Reading badge, to signal to pupils that I value reading, and also to start those informal book conversations. And a lovely one happened at lunch today. So that's what I've been focusing on whilst we've been working through the sessions.
No, it's been really good actually working with Hannah, getting to work together and just bounce off these ideas, because that badge I actually got from Hannah at a Teach Meet years ago, and I also carry one. So this is a really quick snapshot as to what all our members are doing, and all our members are doing small things. It's keeping it simple, because it's everyone's first year, and we've already had messages from people saying, are you going to run it again next year? Which we are. So another example is our virtual library, which is actually something I'm just working on. Children in the school I work in are not in walking distance of a library, so they don't get to visit one. So instead of them going to a physical library, I thought, why not try a virtual library, and each book links to the actual author reading. It's not Americans and different accents and different people, it's the actual authors and their videos that they've uploaded, little snapshots of their videos. So we're hoping it will work, but it's very much at the early stages, and they're all books that are in the school. And one of the principal teachers who's contacted us, it's really nice because we've got a wide range. So we've got management on board from different schools, and they've just very simply timetabled all their events. So they make sure that it's in their timetable that there is time for everything. There's time for reading, there's time to celebrate readers. Another school is using recommendations, and instead of the post-its, they've got little pegs. So they're pegging the children's recommendations onto books so that they don't fall off. One of our support for learning workers has set up an after school club, and after school what they're doing is sharing a book, exploring the library, and what's really good about that one is that they've actually used pupil voice. So the person themselves thought, we'll use this book, but the children selected a different one because it's important to get their voices involved. And then just as a wee final one, it's just a wee book buddy set up. The teacher's just taken a little picture and annotated it with the very first day. And it was when the school did the survey, children said, we want something to cuddle, we want to cuddle up with a teddy. So we thought, why not offer it out to them and see where they go? And I had a look today, the basket's half empty, there's teddies dotted about the library, they're in children's classrooms, they're moving about, and we just want to see what books they encourage children to read. And not included in the photos, but quite a few people have emailed just about that teacher knowledge and about being able to share. So thank you, lots of little simple things, and have a wee look on Twitter, and we're trying to get them sharing a wee bit more there. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten and Hannah, that's absolutely great. It seems like you're really, in your words, listening to the children and seeing where they go, being learner-led in this space, which is fabulous. Now we're turning to Esther Richardson and Kathy Control, who are from Hull and East Riding. You may well have seen on Twitter too, they have their own logo for their reading group. So over to Esther to kick us off.
Thank you. So our reading group came about just from the fact that I'm still at the very early stages of my career. I've only been teaching for 3 years. And last year I got to work with Kathy, and we run the group together, and we realized that we've got a common interest in reading for pleasure for children. And my subject knowledge was quite poor at the time as well, but I wasn't only interested in trying to get to know more books that I can recommend to the children, but also best practice and how to get those children, how to inspire them to use their time for reading for pleasure and not just for other things. So just between the two of us, we thought it's not quite enough for us to talk about it, the two of us. So we decided to embark on this adventure, and the closest group was still too far to us. So we decided to launch our group in Hull, which so far has been, for me personally, been absolutely brilliant. And finding other teachers to talk about their practice and how they are improving reading for pleasure in their own schools and in their own classrooms. But I'm going to pass you on to Kathy, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about how our group is run.
Thank you. Yeah, so one nice thing about setting up the group is, you know, we sort of tapped into sort of our existing contacts. We're both working in the same academy trust, which has got, I think, 16 or 17 schools as part of it.
Kathy, sorry to interrupt you. Can you get a wee bit nearer the microphone? Personally, I'm hearing a little bit hard to hear you. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Is that any better?
A little bit. Yes, go for it. Just give us a welly in your voice.
Yeah, so we've so to get things going, we sort of set up our Twitter account to invite people to the group who are part of our academy trust, but more widely as well. We've had a really nice mix of people from primary settings, people in the early part of the career, people who've been teaching a while. people from the Hull Schools Library Service who brought a lot of expertise as librarians and huge text knowledge. We've had a sort of core about 10 people come to every meeting, plus people who drop in, and we felt it quite important to have that open door policy so that people feel welcome and can come and give it a try, and even if they don't come back, then they've or had a boost in their teacher's subject knowledge of reading. As you can see, we've had a lot of enthusiasm, debate and discussion. The image there is from our picture book focus session, where there's an absolute explosion of picture books on the table that participants brought. We've had lots of debate and discussion, lots of positivity, and through using our Twitter account, we've been in between being able to share with each other the development work that we've done back in our schools, inspired by the things we've discussed in our groups. And I've just got a few examples of those coming up. So there's Esther using the pupil reading surveys to sort of interact with her class and reflect on the children's interest in reading. Book Bag Kits in action, following a meeting where we talked about those, and children at Bude Park enjoying books and a biscuit. Again, people going away from the meetings and just being inspired to encourage children to read and increase the amount of reading going on in their settings.
Great, thank you.
There's another one.
There's just so much going on. It's like a packed agenda of all the things that's happening in Hull, as well as in Glasgow and that base too. Amy Lloyd, who is a Lewisham TRG leader and librarian, who's only going to have 2 minutes this time because we're getting tight, but I know you're very quick at it, Amy. Go for it.
I shall do my best. I shall do my best. Just a health warning. I was the only person, I think, who thought that the Woman Who Turned Children into Birds was a sinister book. So with that proviso, these are my book recommendations. These two I'll sort of do as a pair, as I've only got 2 minutes. So I do think of these books as a pair. They're both published in the 1980s, so both a little bit more dated. Both have Studio Ghibli adaptations, if you know Studio Ghibli, the team behind Spirited Away and that sort of thing. Both really strong female leads, both actually in translation, which I hadn't really twigged until today. Kiki's Delivery Service, a young witch, goes out and sets out on her own to set up her own business. A really wonderful kind of sense of quite harsh autonomy. She has to go off and just do it on her own. And a similar thing with Ronya the Robber's Daughter. Ronya is born on a day when the lightning strikes the castle, and she's kind of mythologized as this kind of really important character, and then decides that's not really for her. She doesn't want this chosen life. She doesn't want to be a robber's daughter. So goes out, manages to influence the boy next door to come with her, and goes and lives in a cave and lives off milk that they get from this horse that they find. It's a really extraordinary story. If you like stories with where the children are genuinely autonomous, things like Emil and the Detectives or Andy Mulligan's Trash, you'll definitely like this. It's just wonderful, this book. The third one is a slight cheat because I haven't read it. It's sat by my bed waiting to be read, but I have read Hamlet. So this is To Be or Not to Be. It is a choose your own adventure Hamlet. So it's quite cheeky. It's very like Shakespeare is sort of in it as a character, I think, very intertextual, very postmodern, very kind of cheeky and playful. I've just realized I haven't mirrored my screen, so sorry that you're seeing this backwards. If you're looking at this and thinking it looks slightly familiar, if you're sort of KS2, KS3, you might know Lumberjanes. So this is the guy that illustrated Lumberjanes, another really great book, actually, and illustrated throughout. And a choose your own adventure, so slightly challenging the canon in a way, I would say, to make a Shakespeare choose your own adventure. Those are my 3 top tips.
Lovely. Thank you, Amy. That was rapid fire and very well done. So now I'm turning over to Rich Charlesworth, and indeed welcoming Chitra, who I believe Rich is going to welcome to our event tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be welcoming Chitra Soundar to our newsletter live tonight. Chitra is an Indian-born British author and storyteller based in London who's published over 60 books for children. Many of you will know her from such texts such as Patton's Pumpkin and the picture book series beginning with You're Safe With Me. That rich oral storytelling runs through her literary DNA. From inclusive non-fiction, such as We All Celebrate, to humorous illustrated chapter fiction, her 2023 publication No Pets Allowed Chicha's work continues to be celebrated. She's an important voice for children to read, engage with, and be heard in schools and homes up and down the country. First, we're going to hear a little from Chicha herself about her own reading journey and how she became an author. Afterwards, Teresa and I are going to ask her some questions. And finally, if we've got some time, I know we're hard pushed, I know many of you would love to hear a reading. Without further ado, over to you, Chicha.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Teresa and Debbie, for having me. I'm going to share screen because this is something I show in school, so it's probably interesting for you to see as well. So when I do assemblies, I talk about this. I was born in Chennai, as Rich said. It's a southeast coastal city in India. And that's me as a baby on a table with no health and safety left there. And I grew up in what we call a joint family. So we lived our grandparents, aunts and uncles all together in one place. And the photo on the left where my mum is the one in the red sari, and then on the other side, the older woman is my grandmother. And because we were in a joint family and we were in a 2-bedroom flat, we used to sleep on the living room floor next to my grandmother every night. And therefore, we used to either listen to the radio, which is on her left, as we slept, or we used to listen to stories that she told us. And summers were even more amazing because summer is when you make mango pickles. And we have 2 big mango trees. And my grandmother and her sister used to put us all to work, child labor, but in return, to make the work easy, throughout the day, they'll be telling us stories as we wash the mangoes and put them in salt and whatever that we needed to do. So it was very ingrained in us to tell each other stories orally, to be able to, play and do whatever that we did. And my mom, I'm going to show you in a minute, is a playwright. She's an improv playwright, which means she'd make up a story, she'll create the characters, and then set the scene and say, okay, now you speak the dialogue yourself, and then she'll direct it. And we went on stage. We were on stage, I think from when we were 4 until we were 16. Every summer we used to have rehearsals and then go and perform on stage. On the other side, you see the photograph of my cousins. So I am the family storyteller. So whenever we used to go to my mom's side of the family, we used to all get together for 2 weeks. And I used to be telling stories to all the kids. Obviously, they're all grown up now, living in different countries. Whenever I meet them, I ask them, they apparently remember the stories I used to tell them. I can't remember a single one of them, except they think most of the stories were about a bald baby living on a tree. So children, when I tell them in assembly, they're absolutely very happy to listen about bald babies. So we make up stories about bald babies in assemblies most of the time when we are there. So this is my mom performing. She performs until before COVID. She was performing on stage on all amateur drama. And this is me taking after her, performing my own story theatre, which one I wrote, and then I performed with a co-actor. We did like 5 shows and they wanted us to go on tour. And I said, no, I'm actually an author. I'd like to stay at home. So I probably wouldn't, but it was absolute fun to do it. I love doing school visits. I do a lot of them. This is me in school in year 3. And when our school had no learning by rote. It was all about being able to understand and comprehend and then come and talk about it and write about it. We had a lot of freedom to write answers the way we wanted to, rather than just write what was told to us to write. And because of my oral storytelling, I entered loads of competitions. And one of the first things I did was this. In year 3 in my school, I got the first prize in oral storytelling. And our schools are super big. So my school is an 8-form entry with 40 children in each class and just one per teacher. And I went in front of this mega big school in assembly and told the story that my grandmother had told me. So I learned the story in Tamil and told the story in English. I went back as an adult about 10 years ago to school. I went to meet with my teachers, and my year 3 teacher, without any introductions, remembered me after like 40 years or so. And the first thing she asked me was, Chitra, are you still telling stories? And I said, yes, and now I get paid for it. And one of the common things in my report card was always Chitra talks too much. And now who's laughing? I'm not. so definitely paid off. So this is the other side of the family, which is my mom's side, where we used to do storytelling. This is literally the first thing I could find that I wrote. I apparently went and scribbled in my granddad's diary, which I found a few years ago. And apparently book is God and God is book. So I guess it was all on brand at that point in time. So that's kind of how I got into storytelling. And I'm still, until about, and I taught computer science for a long time. So I was used to talking in front of crowds. And then at some point, I became super shy. Like I couldn't read a book to a friend's kid. And I said, no, I'm not making the voices. I'm not doing that. That's just not me. And so I decided I have to train, and I went and trained as a professional storyteller so that I will be more comfortable performing my own books. Now I perform everywhere. I go into schools, and now I've realized one of the best things about it is making mistakes and making silly is much more funner with kids, because then they see you're not this polished figure. They think they can also learn from you and make mistakes and do those things. And to get me in that mood, my storytelling mentor told me, go be a clown. So I went and did a weekend course in clowning, which was super fun, and which showed me the other side of making mistakes. Oh, it is supposed to be like that. It's supposed not to be polished. It's supposed to be fun. And we make lots of things like that. That's kind of where I went. I'm going to stop there and let you guys ask questions.
That's so fascinating. Thank you so much. That thread of play, it seems we started with a book that sort of had elements of play and freedom, and your sort of talk has focused on that as well. I know Teresa's going to ask a few questions in a bit about your work in school. So I thought I'd start about mentioning your work with empathy. So we're delighted to see the Star Birthday, part of Nikhil and Jay series, published in 2021 on Empathy Lab's 2023 Read for Empathy collection. As Teresa and I are both judges, we know that one of the empathy angles is texts that build understanding between individuals and communities. And I know that you've referred to your text celebrating families and blended heritages. Can you tell us a little bit about how you incorporate empathy into your writing? Is it something that you do consciously, or is it just something that just naturally occurs?
I think most of the time it's probably subconscious. It's like how you want to be treated and how you want to treat other people, and also growing in a joint family. And even now, like my sister is younger to me, so she can't call me by name. And growing up in India and living in Singapore, in Asia, the common thread is your neighbor is not Mrs. somebody, it's always an auntie or an uncle. Even now I go home regularly to India, and obviously they're all much elderly now, but everybody on the street will still be uncle, auntie. So I go knock on every door and say, hey, I'm visiting, how are you? So it's that. I think I live in London in a high-rise apartment block, but our 7th floor, everybody knows everybody helps with each other's things and advice and all sorts of things. So for me, that is what unknown is scary. And especially for blended families, I found there were no stories. My nephews are in a blended family. My brother-in-law is from Manchester, Stoke-on-Trent. And when we mingle as a family so well, like his aunts and uncles are my aunts and uncles, so they write to me, I write to them, we meet with each other, we take them each other. So when we blended like that, I realized there are no books for blended kids, especially British Asian kids, and that's one of the reasons Nikhil and Jay came about, and that's helped. I take that book into schools, and we talk about what you call your mom, what you call your dad, what you call your grandparents. And the whole class bursts forward with their differences, but also their similarities. Oh, I do that with my granddad. And that created so much conversation about all the class, and for them to become curious about each other. And that's why every Nickel and Jay book has a recipe as well, which you can then bring, share, and then the kids will talk about the recipe. I just want to say one more thing. If you see Sophia, the illustrator, they are non-binary. And one of the kids came and asked me, it says they there, are they a boy or a girl? And another boy, even before I could answer, another boy corrected, it's a they, okay, just deal with it. And then they went away. So for them, it was completely all right. And that's something that I'm very proud of sharing with children, to say, yeah, that's how it is. And it's normal. And it's created that feeling of empathy throughout the stories.
Yeah, you can't help but feel inclusive. That's such an important point. I was particularly taken with your picture book series. I've brought one home from school.
Yes, I can see.
It's not quite as impressive as your bookshelves behind you, but it's linked in with this one. So I was particularly taken with the series that you published with Lantana in collaboration with the illustrator Poonam Mistry. So having returned to You're Strong With Me recently, I was really struck by its emotional resonance. It's a really comforting read that celebrates inner strength, and it's ideal for younger readers as well as those in upper key stage 2 who love the poetic patterns and phrases. You've also worked with several other illustrators, including Jen Catton in your Sonna Sharma series. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about these collaborations. How are these partnerships forged? Is it something that's suggested by your publisher, or is it something that you suggest to them? And how do you develop these relationships with the illustrators that you work with?
Illustrators is a bit, unless you're Julia Donaldson, you probably can't ask for someone. But what I have done, and I learned, I don't know whether you all know the Yasmin books by Sadia Faruqi. So Sadia and I talk to each other often. And one of the early tricks that she told me is, you can tell your publisher that you will work only with a South Asian illustrator, and they will want to do that. Unless you push for it, you're not going to get it. Because I was constantly going, oh, I don't know how to do this. I want to ask people to be able to illustrate. Having said that, Franny Lesak has done an amazing job of Parton's Pumpkin. It's one of my absolute popular books. But with Poonam, it was very funny when I showed Yosef with me to Lantana a year before. And then they said, oh, there's no children in this book, they're all animals, so I'm not really interested. And I said, that's fine, and I'll come back to you, and I have another book. And then they called me back a year later when they had seen Poonam's illustrations at an exhibition, and they came back and said, we want to work with Poonam, and she only draws animals, can I take the story back? And it so happened that the whole series. So Poonam and I've met a few times, and we don't know, especially most picture book publishers don't let you talk to the illustrators until the text is fully nailed down. So until it's 100% in its place, they won't give it to the illustrator, just in case they have to redo anything if you change the text later. So we normally don't communicate at all. So that I'm not on her shoulder, somehow influencing the way they want to draw. So that happens. With Sona Sharma series and Nikhil and Jay series, even though they both are South Asian illustrators, they're both from Bangladeshi background who have never been to India or to Bangladesh. So what I do is I create huge Pinterest boards for them, or a PowerPoint full of reference illustrations, because East Asian or Bangladesh is not the same culture as us, and they both have Muslim heritages and I don't. So the books are all based on Hindu heritages. So I create huge number of Pinterest boards and reference illustrations.
That's so fascinating. Never occurred to me that the author themselves have to create Pinterest boards for the illustrator. I feel like you're doing half their work. But I'm just going to move you on to another question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
very generous. We're a lot of teachers in the room here who bring authors into school tutoring, so we're really interested in what do you think makes the difference when you go to a school when the experience for you as well as for the children is a good one? I'm wondering whether it's about teacher prep, the best situation where teachers have widely read them. Is it the children knowing your books? Is it having books for sale? What advice have you got to teachers about making author visits valuable, not only in terms of respectful for the author, but valuable for the young people, when you've seen so many and you've done so many?
Yeah, I think, and I have a whole list on the website as well if you're going to go and download it. But basically, I think knowing that there is an author visit, every teacher and every even office people to know that there is an author visit coming up is so much important, both logistically and for when parents come and ask, oh, is there an author visit? Can I buy the book or whatever? And the office doesn't know, then you've lost that connection between that. Secondly, reading those books ahead of time and knowing, and also working with authors to ask, okay, are you going to perform this book in this class? Can we do this book? We're going to read the other book. So that way, then that book is fresh when I come in and do it. And it's not like they've already read it, but you have read some other book and at least talked about the names, gone through the website, because lots of us have amazing information on the website that is very child friendly, that you can talk it through and discuss it. Most importantly, I think having the books in the library or classroom, depending on how each school works, is important, because I've come and I've done a whole event. All the kids are interested. Now they go and ask, where can we read this? Affordability, right? Not all kids are going to be able to buy. Some schools don't arrange book sales. Some parents cannot take them into a library. But if you then have a class set or a school set, then you can put it out and go, okay, we have an author visit this week. These
Make a display and follow it up.
Yeah. And that gives them that continuity from where you left off to go. And then the last thing I would say is, for all my books, I have activities on my website. You can download, so you can, after the event, you can continue that conversation. Oh, let's do this. Let's do a activity based on the book that we just read, or you read.
That sounds fabulous. It sounds like you've done half the work for the teachers there, let alone half the work.
That's the whole point, because I know you guys are very busy.
Oh,
and so when I'm writing, when I finish the book, waiting for the launch, I create all of the resources, and of course my publishers are very happy with that as well.
I bet they are. You're being very generous. I think we need to call this part to a close, because I know we've got Kelly's going to give us an update on research, and we've also got so a book wave to do. But thank you, Chicha, so much. It's really honourable for you to turn up your evening to join us, and also so fascinating to find out how much you do on the side for the profession and for the illustrators who work with you. Good job, lady. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm handing over to Debbie and Kelly for the book wave now, I think.
And indeed, I hope we've all got some books ready to wave. Are we there? People, not everyone's got their cameras on, so please do get your cameras on and get your books out, and let's see what we've got.
Pop yourself on gallery so that you can see everybody else.
Yeah, let's see everybody. Who's going to kick us off? Lisa Hall, what have you got there?
Hi, this is The Thief Sang Songs by Sophie Anderson. So it's a book that subtly explores grief, I feel, in a very sort of mystical, magical setting. And the central character has two very interesting and cute pets.
Oh, okay. I know a bit of Sophie Anderson, but I haven't read that one. Thank you very much. Kelly, who's next?
Sorry, I was just taking photographs. Oh, let me see. Melissa, what have you got there?
I've got Glitter Boy by Ian Eagleton. It's just come out, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one.
Oh, you got in quick to get a copy of that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
But I've seen some great reviews on that, and I've heard Ian speak as well. So I think that, there's lots for him to share. I think he might be somebody we want to get hold of to talk to us in a newsletter live would be great. Georgie, what have you got there?
Hi there, I've got Nikita Gill's These Are the Words. It is a fearless burst to find your voice, and it is some grown-up poetry for maybe older secondary children and adults. I love it.
Excellent. Grown-up poetry, I like that. That's great. What else can we see? Oh, Karen, is that Rocket?
No, it's Speak Up by Rebecca Fergus, but I have to confess I haven't read it. I've started it and really loving it. It's about an autistic girl who doesn't speak, but she has a kind of secret life where she actually performs and is a bit of a YouTube sensation. So it's really good. It's a graphic novel.
I
haven't finished it, but I know it's going to be good.
The total opposite to what I was thinking.
That's what Joe Cochrane's reading, because I'm trying to find out. It's sort of sitting there tempting me, and I want to see it closer. Go for it.
This is a grown-up book. This is one I was given for Christmas, and it's a Catherine Rundle, but it's her super intelligent book on John Donne. And so because it's super intelligent, I can only read it in tiny bits at a time. And I have to kind of go back and reread, but it's just, you know, Catherine Rundle in all her brilliance. But the children's books I read over half term is, I just finished Glitter Boy and it's brilliant. I had to keep putting it down because it's really hard to read the times where he's being bullied. And I just read the final, the sequel in the duology of Like a Curse. And so I read Like a Curse, and it's a sequel to Like a Charm by Elle McNichol. And they were both wonderful reads over half term. And I think they've both already been borrowed by children in the class.
Brilliant.
I don't think we've got time for many more. Can I just ask, what has Claire Garland, tell us what you're holding there?
Hi, I'm reading The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander, and my friend, I think she's on here as well, Aileen McIver, she recommended it to me. We co-lead TRG in South Lanarkshire in Scotland, and it's fantastic. He wrote it as a poem for his daughter, and it's just so inspiring and it's amazing, and it's a brilliant recommendation.
Thank you, Claire, fantastic. Great. I think we're going to have to stop recommending books, folks. I'm sorry. Teresa, we're going over to Kelly now.
We are. Thank you. I was trying to say that, but I was unmuted, or muted rather.
That's
Kelly,
brilliant.
over to you for some final thanks and a research update.
And I love that, Claire, that you were talking about a recommendation from a fellow TRG member. And ultimately, it's great to get those recommendations and to share that practice with each other, that research-informed practice. So just very quickly, all of the work of the Open University Reading for Pleasure team is within the Centre for Literacy and Social Justice at the Open University. So we just wanted to draw your attention to the work of the centre. Really, this work, we're looking to address these inequalities in children's literature experiences through research and practice. So I believe Debbie's going to pop in the chat the link for the Centre for Literacy and Social Justice. Excitingly, we have Darren Cheddy coming to speak in May. We did have an earlier date, but it's been postponed, so you haven't missed it, 24th of May. Do come and join us Beyond the Secret Garden. And Darren's going to be discussing his ideas of what we can learn from the presentation of childhood in contemporary children's literature. And if you've ever heard Darren speak, he's really engaging. So do come along and join us to that event. Something else to mention, and you might not have seen on the Open University Reading for Pleasure website, OURfP.org, on the top bar, there's a Reads Plus tab. And this is a really helpful tab if you're interested in research. You might be doing a there that you might be particularly interested in is from one of the Centre for Literacy and Social Justice members, Dr. Agnieszka Kosmikova of Prague, and she actually talks about her research absorbed in stories. And ultimately, we're looking at what does it mean to get lost in a book? And she did some really interesting research looking at children's perspectives of what they felt and what they thought when they're truly absorbed. So do have a look at that Reads Plus section on the website to find some more of that information. Now, we're really exciting to share with you. We have another Open University Reading for Pleasure conference coming up in June. I believe the date is on the next slide. I'm not sure who's controlling the slides. It's going to be on Saturday, the 17th of June, in Milton Keynes at the Open University campus. You can see an image here from our October conference, which was really, really well attended. We're going to be focusing on the power of book blether and how we can harness this to motivate our readers.
Good luck. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see so many folk. Great to see so many. Wonderful.